Hi, I'm Anne Regimbal, the author of Mary Magdalene's Stations of the Cross, and I am so honored to be invited by St. Mary Magdalene Catholic Church in Berkeley, California today to offer my reflections on this beautiful passage from John's Gospel and to join in your celebration of the feast of St. Mary Magdalene. That passage from John makes us think about, where did it happen? A visual is often very good when you think about it. So let's start there. Here is exactly where that encounter occurred. On the left-hand side, you see the tomb of Jesus at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. It's probably not what you envisioned when you listened to that passage or when you've read it in the past, because it's so ornate. It's beautifully appointed, but it's hard to imagine that encounter between Jesus and Mary Magdalene actually happening there because of the way it's been so beautifully preserved over the last 2,000 years. So let's go across town to East Jerusalem. That looks a little more like what you probably pictured, doesn't it? This is the Garden Tomb in East Jerusalem. Now, it's 700 years too old to have actually been the tomb of Jesus, but it sort of gives you an idea of what a rock-hewn tomb in Jerusalem would have looked like at the time. And you can picture that wonderful encounter, that whole story happening right here. You can almost imagine Mary Magdalene peeking into the tomb and seeing the angels sitting right here at the foot or the head of where the body had been. You can imagine her stepping out and seeing a man right here who she initially believes is the gardener. And what does she say to him? She says, "Sir, if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and remove him." That sentence alone tells us volumes about Mary Magdalene's character. She is a take charge kind of woman. She's fiercely loyal. She's very persistent, and she does not take no for an answer. You know, had it actually been the gardener and he said, "Oh yes, the body's down over here," you can't really imagine what would she have done? How would she even have carried it? Where would she have put it? But you know, given what we know about her character, she would have figured it out. You know, for 2,000 years, people have speculated about who Mary Magdalene was because the Bible tells us very little about her background. And there's been such a wide range of speculation on that front. You know, it's ranged from a prostitute, a penitent prostitute, the sinful woman who wiped Jesus' feet at Simon's house. The Da Vinci Code, of course, has a very different theory about who Mary Magdalene was. And in the Orthodox Church, the Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, they have a very different legend about Mary Magdalene, that she confronted the Emperor Tiberius and denounced Pontius Pilate. And that actually is the origin of the legend of Easter eggs. There's also a more common theory now that she was perhaps a wealthy widow and someone who was responsible for a lot of the financing behind Jesus and his disciples. And we do know that she and other women traveled with Jesus and provided for them out of their own resources. But I'm not sure we're ever going to know with any certainty who Mary Magdalene was, even with recent archaeology, which we'll talk about in a minute. One thing we do know that we can tell from the Bible is a great deal about Mary Magdalene's character. What does the Bible tell us about her? Well, she was strong. She was tenacious. She was fiercely loyal. She was virtually unstoppable. This is a statue of Mary Magdalene. She was chosen as one of the saints for the Catholic memorial at 9/11. And again, it's not hard to understand why. She's someone who witnessed a horrific event but had the strength, the tenacity to get through it, to support Jesus right until the end. The real beauty of Mary Magdalene lies in her character. Now, in 2016, Pope Francis elevated St. Mary Magdalene's memorial on July 22nd to an actual feast day, calling her the Apostle to the Apostles. And right at that time, Archbishop Arthur Roche, who was the secretary of the congregation, wrote from the Vatican, "The elevation of St. Mary Magdalene by Pope Francis honors a woman who is an example and a model for every woman in the church." St. Mary Magdalene's feast day is a call for all Christians to reflect more deeply on the dignity of women, the new evangelization, and the greatness of the mystery of divine mercy. Now, let's talk about Magdala, because this is her hometown. And there's no better place to honor Mary Magdalene than where she's from. What you're looking at here is a first century synagogue that was found at Magdala. And there's been pretty compelling evidence that Jesus taught in that synagogue. So this is really interesting. If you're interested in the archaeology at Magdala, which we'll talk about in just a moment, there's a very lengthy discussion of that I do on YouTube, if you're interested in that. But Magdala was a town. This is a map of Israel. Here's Jerusalem here, and Magdala was a town up here on the Sea of Galilee. So as you can see, it's a fairly long distance between Magdala and Jerusalem. Even to do it today, it's about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive by car. So in the first century, when people were walking or perhaps at best had donkeys, it would take several days, maybe a week, to get from Magdala to Jerusalem. 33 years after the crucifixion, there was a huge revolt against the Romans, and it was successful for a short period of time, but then it was put down. It led to wide-scale fighting. The entire city of Jerusalem was burned to the ground, and at that time, which was about 67 AD, Magdala was completely destroyed, and it lay destroyed until 2009. It was only discovered 11 years ago, and quite by accident. These are some of the things that you would see today if you were to visit the archaeological site at Magdala. They're fascinating, and it shows us also that this was a very wealthy town. What you're looking at here is a Jewish ritual bath called a mikvah, and we know that Mary Magdalene was an observant Jewish woman, and she, in all likelihood, may have bathed right there at the times when the Jewish law required purification. So that's a really interesting find. And this is the Magdala stone. There's a lot of very interesting things. In fact, Smithsonian Magazine has called the Magdala archaeology project the most exciting find in biblical archaeology since the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So it's very, very interesting. But one of the most beautiful things, if you ever get a chance to visit Magdala, is this wonderful church, Catholic church, that's been built right on the site of the archaeology. And this is called the Women's Atrium. And it honors Mary Magdalene and all of the women in the New Testament. In fact, every pillar here is dedicated to one or more of the women mentioned in the New Testament. So in addition to Mary Magdalene, we have the two sisters of Lazarus, Mary and Martha. We have Susanna and Johanna, and I think even Simon Peter's mother-in-law is mentioned in there as well. So it's one of the only places in the world I know of that is dedicated to the women of the New Testament. And one of the very beautiful things here is this inscription it's a golden mosaic in Latin that goes around the women's mosaic, and Women's Atrium is a quote from St. Pope John Paul II that says, "In this holy place, the Church gives thanks for the feminine genius, for the eternal dignity of women, and for the great works God has done through them throughout history for humanity." So in conclusion, let's give thanks today for the feminine genius of Mary Magdalene. Let's vow to be brave, loyal, determined, and unstoppable in facing our own challenges and in helping those we love to face theirs. And I hope that you, as parishioners of St. Mary Magdalene in Berkeley, will give thanks for being part of a parish named for a beautiful saint of which you can be so proud. Thank you again.